Hi everyone, we're here at the Canadian National Exhibition here in Toronto, down near Ontario Place, and I wanted to capture a scene of the CNE, or the X as it's known here. Now, I didn't actually go in, it was incredibly busy, so I found a spot along Lakeshore where I could still see the action, and it was a bit quieter to capture this scene. I don't love the double loops. There's a Ferris wheel and then a roller coaster that does the loop, as well as the swing machine where everybody's on a cable flying around. Two loops in the center of a composition I found to be challenging, but it's what I could get, and I did want to mark the end of the summer with a sketch of the X. And so I did very quick pencil to put in the major elements, including the two loops, as I mentioned, the Ferris wheel and the roller coaster. I'll leave it to you to figure out which is which as the video goes on. And so this is one of the last videos, I think, where I'm still using the Micron pen. I ended up getting a fountain pen with the appropriate ink, and I've started to prefer it. I'm still sort of sketching out everything. I think a little less than I used to try to make the sketches a conversation between the watercolor and the pen, not just coloring in a pen sketch. In the end, I ended up working, you'll see this one a lot more after the on location sketching. I find after an hour or an hour and a half sitting on my little stool, I get a bit restless, and I'm not able to finish sketches like this in under that amount of time and be happy with them. But it's fun drawing all of these elements. Right now, that's if it's hard to tell, they might look like little cherries on a line. It's a chairlift that they have going through the X that takes you across the whole exhibition grounds. And then there's I should have looked up the names of all of these rides beforehand, but there was a ride kind of beyond that roller coaster loop that you can see poking through. So now I'm wetting the entire page. I like working on wet. I find it helps the watercolors come alive, and it's less daunting than putting a mark on the page. Um, I don't know, something about making even those marks I found to be pretty crisp, but something about like a heavy saturated brush on a dry page is just incredibly intimidating. So the wet page sort of takes the edge off. So I'm trying to do the sky. It was a nice dusk time of day, so I'm trying to capture a little bit of the warmth of the sky as well as the blue in that base wash. And I mentioned conversation between line work and watercolor washes, and that's what I'm going for here. After a base wash, I just want to bring forward some of the lines of the sketch. Still trying to catch that balance of loose sketching mixed with watercolor and have them intertwined, so it's not just a watercolor or not just a loose ink sketch. And enjoying the process of discovering how that works. And this ride was great. Like the way the sun was, there was catching a lot of highlights on the tower, and then the silhouettes of the people in the swings against the evening sky was really nice. So tried to capture the spirit of that in this. This particular roller coaster was very patriotic. It had 4 Canadian flags mounted to the top. And I'm from a generation that grew up playing a game called Roller Coaster Tycoon, and the sound effect of the guests visiting your park is exactly like the cheers I would hear every time the roller coaster went around that loop. So now we're getting into the second wash, and this is where I'm starting with the foliage, the trees, kind of framing the park in this composition. And I've adopted kind of starting with that really rich yellow for my trees. I think it's what I saw in that Domestica course I took with Daniel Pito Campos. And I just really like the way his paintings look. And so I started using that yellow as my base for trees and then adding in blues and browns and really sparingly greens um, to get my foliage. So in this second kind of initial wash, I was trying to get the warmth of the raking sun. It's hard to watercolor as the light keeps changing, so I tried to hold in my mind the most interesting um, light conditions through the sketch. Adding in some shadows now on the cars leaving the festivities. And as a side note, I'm kind of discovering my palette. I was very limited in my watercolor works before, and I was gifted this beautiful set of 24 Daniel Smith colors. And there's 4 or 5 that I've really used a lot of. You can probably see some of the deeper pits in the set. And some I haven't explored at all. Like there's some turquoise and some very rich greens. And I decided to try to bring them out, play with them in this sketch. And now building up the shadows of the trees. There's something in my mind that struggles with adding darks after lights, and I know that's how you have to build up a drawing, but just seeing the water on top of the light makes me think that I don't know, I'd rather work lights last. I do struggle with adding in shadows. But yeah, seeing the water and the pigment liquid on top of the page makes me think like I'm just totally covering up um, the highlights, and I want it to be the opposite. I want the highlights to pop forward, and I think it's in part just an illusion. Like when everything dries, and then the shadows do recede a little bit, and the highlights can come forward. And at this time, I was feeling a bit finicky, like picking all these different colors to add these little bits of the drawing. Like you can see, I'm using slightly different blues for the arms of that twirly ride and the arms of the other twirly ride behind the roller coaster loop. I don't think it added that much. I wish I'd just picked a simpler tone and done the whole thing at once. I find I kind of get lost in the weeds sometimes and spend a bunch of time doing things that don't push the drawing forward. I mean, it's all learning, but I'd ultimately like to be able to get a finished sketch I'm happy with after an hour and a half of sitting. But you'll see the final sketch. I worked quite a bit beyond this when I was at home, just experimenting with things, and actually experimenting with gouache. But I find gouache pretty cumbersome to work with in addition to watercolor, and so I just preferred working at home um, for this particular piece. And as you can see, I saved the more saturated colors for near the end. The really saturated yellows for the traffic lights. They seem to feature prominently in lots of urban sketches, as well as the saturated red of the one-way signs, and a little bit more muted for the Canadian flags because they're off in the background. And now I'm adding the final touches for, I say final for the on location portion of painting. And now I'm going back in again with a pen to bring forward some lines. And I'm trying to get away from outlining everything and really using or I still put lines around a lot, but having the thicker lines where there's shadow and then a thinner line where it's maybe the leading edge and it's a highlight. Try to build up some energy and contrast within the drawing using pen. So I hope you've enjoyed following along my video. I haven't done it quite tutorial style because I feel like I'm still figuring it out. So I do these to share the process, and maybe as I sort of find a technique that's working, I might start some tutorial style drawings. But these are really about sharing the journey. So this is where I got to on site. I did add a little bit of highlights with the white pen. This one I don't like as much. It's very weak, and you have to go over and over again to get the white strong enough that it comes through. But I did work, you'll see in the next image. I did keep working this at home. I added a lot more blues and browns and greens to the trees. And then I really tried to bring forward the colors of the evening time. So I mixed up some gouache and added a lot of very pinky warm hues and added that to the composition. And I was pretty satisfied with the outcome of working with gouache. I just want to figure out a way to do this all on location. So I hope you've enjoyed. If you have, please give a like and check out some other videos on my channel. Thank you.